All right. Thank you everyone for being here. I hope that lunch was all right. I don't know how are we feeling? We're getting the post-lunch tiredness? Not yet. I was considering giving you a little bit of time to maybe a little nap, but then it would be a bit too tight on time, so I think we will go on with the presentation. As the previous version of myself shared with you, the idea here is really for me to share some of the learnings and the experiences I've had working with DevOps. As I mentioned, I've been working in the DevOps area in the last 3-4 years. I realized that that's not a lot of time, but I have some of the learnings here. I'll share them with you. You might have to share some stuff with me as well. We will have some maybe some questions. You'll have to wait and see. But really here, the idea is I'm not trying to argue that this is the only answer, but just my experience. And if you don't agree with it, that would be great, because then there's more opportunity for learning. So please reach out to me after. If you have questions, there's also Slido. So please keep on using that and we'll take the questions in the end. All right, so when I started working on DevOps, and this is not, we'd say, with the unicorns, but really with the big enterprises that we work with. 4 or 5 years ago, you would still hear a lot of DevOps. What's that? And even though 4 or 5 years is not a lot, it is a lot in IT, and there has been a clear change of dialogue, of questions, and you don't hear this DevOps, what's that anymore. At some point, you started to hear, DevOps, that's nice, but it's only for the unicorns of the world. There's no way I can have that in my organization. And then in the last years, we really started to seeing the shift for, okay, DevOps, how do I get it? I need to get my hands on that. So it has been really a nice transition, and it has been really exciting to be part of this journey. But maybe before we start, and okay, this is a DevOps conference, so we would agree, or we would think that we would mostly agree with what we mean by DevOps. But my experience is that that's not always the case. So I think there's quite a lot of different definitions of DevOps. We saw quite some interesting ones in the morning in the keynote, but it still means a lot of different things for different people, right? So it's a little bit like this kind of the similarity to, depending where you are in the organization, in your career, then DevOps will be something different. And before we kind of get started, I would actually like to ask you, so there's some learning back, hopefully. So if you could go to menti.com, put this code, and I would like to, if you would put some words to, and you can input several one at a time, what does DevOps mean to you? So, let's see if it would work, yeah. So, and it's open now. So, menti.com, use that code, and then we would start seeing some words here. So we have collaboration, we have reliability, automation, CI/CD, speed, scalability, culture, fail. All right. People. See that the bigger the word is, it means that there's more people adding to that. So we do have automation and collaboration, then culture and speed. So got a lot of cool stuff. Developers and operations, updating environments. Very good. I can see that you have been studying, because it does cover not only the tool side but also the collaboration and culture. So I think we have a pretty decent definition, or at least a word cloud on DevOps here. Whoa, I cannot read things anymore. Working together, sharing, mindset. I see an impossible as well there. I would like to hear more about it later, but that might actually be a good segue into the next question. I promise it's the last one. So I've just closed this one now. Thank you for your input. And now the other one is, so following up on the impossible part. So what is preventing you or your organization from being more DevOps? And here, again, it depends what we mean by DevOps, but it could be either having more automation in place, having development and operations working together. Like, it would be nice to hear a little bit from you on what is it that is preventing, or do you think is preventing you? Organizational structure, legacy, management, mindset. Jenkins. Would be interested in hearing about that as well. Infrastructure as code. Again, back to silos, legacy, organization, mindset, management. So there's, I think, one of the interesting kind of components here, or kind of outputs, is that you don't have that much here about technology, right? It's a lot about the people and culture and ways of working. And that, I think, was a big learning for me as well when I started, because I came into DevOps from a tool perspective, and there's so many cool tools out there. And then once you start working more and more on it, you realize that, yeah, the tools actually these days end up being the easy part, especially if you're in a more of a greenfield development, right? And it's all the things about it regarding the culture and the processes that make it harder and more challenging and more exciting. Okay. Thank you so much for your input. And let's get back to the presentation then. Thank you. Not that one. This one. So, I did put a few kind of definitions here. I think we did get quite a few of these. So we have collaboration, we have automation, we have small deployments, so kind of getting together with the agile and lean mindset. We have making one team out of development and operations, culture change that you so correctly pointed out as well, continuous delivery, infrastructure as code, so DevOps tools. As you can see, it's a lot of things, and I think it's hard to truly define it, and I think that's part of the idea as well. But then when we discuss it, then it's important that we actually figure out what is it that we're talking about before we go in and dig deeper there. Okay, so a little bit about the story, and I think I have a feeling that quite a few of you have seen this before. So it's really, we can tell the tales of Agile and DevOps a little bit from the perspective of breaking down walls. So Agile, we have the development, and here it's in the center, because I also came from the development perspective, so we have to be in the center. And here the idea is that the development wants to really create change faster. We were seeing that the communication with business wasn't always there, and this is, in my perspective, one of the main things that Agile was kind of trying to address and is addressing, was really to build or to break this wall between business and development and get people to collaborate more, to talk more to each other, and to also align on their objectives. But then if we look on the other side, then we have yet another wall, or at least sometimes we do, between development and operations, right? And the well-known idea of development working in something, getting features out, and then just handing it over the wall to operations. And in here we see, we depict operations with the kind of the usual goal of just having stability and not really want more features, because that's at least potential for instability. So this is kind of the one way of seeing Agile and DevOps and how they also kind of work together. And of course, we go back to culture, right? All this is really, I would say, only made possible if you have a culture that enables that. Okay, but I'm here to tell you a little bit about the things that I've learned. And really, I have 4 or 5 points here, and then I'll take you through a few of the kind of real-life scenarios that I've been working with in the last years. So, the first thing that I wanted to share, and goes a bit to the previous slide as well, is that Agile truly loves DevOps, right? And I think some years ago we were seeing some discussion still on, okay, what is, I think some people were asking, what is the difference between Agile and DevOps, and are they compatible? Do you need them together? Right now I would say that, and maybe that will change, or my experience, but right now I would say that Agile not only loves DevOps, but it actually needs DevOps. So you need, and here I guess by DevOps we're talking about both the, I would say mainly the technical enablers. So you need to have your processes in place, your technology, your automation, your CI/CD pipeline. You need to have them in place if you really want to take advantage of the Agile ways of working. Because if you're working in sprint, you have 2-week sprints, you want to have a potentially shippable product in the end of those 2 sprints, but then if your cycle time from having the, let's say, the feature ready in your machine or in the, let's say, development branch, and having it deployed to production is very long, months, let's say, then it gets very hard to really realize that value quickly. So Agile really loves DevOps. The other one is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So this was, we're actually talking at dinner yesterday with Kaimar, and he actually gave a workshop yesterday, I don't know if any of you attended, on pragmatic DevOps. So I think that's an expression that that really kind of wraps this up pretty well, that DevOps is a lot of things, but we don't need to have them all to benefit from its principles or from its practices. So it's a lot about maybe starting small. It's about maybe choosing what kind of things you want to change. And you can start with those changes. So maybe you don't have to go full on development and operations working together in the same team. Maybe you can, because that might be hard in your organization to break those silos. So maybe you can start by focusing on the automation side. Maybe you can have a CI/CD pipeline that is automated, and that you have exactly the same automation for your development and test environment as you have for production. So in that sense, you are getting development and operations closer together without actually having them in the same team. So it's kind of choosing which improvements you can take, potentially looking at what is your bottleneck, what is your constraint, and address that, lift it, improve it, and then kind of keeping iterating there. But then another point is that once we then want to scale it up to the organization, we do need leadership support for that. And then the third point, kind of going back to what I was mentioning, everything as code and automation, this is crucial, right? I think it's quite normal to think about your application as code and in a source repository, but we should take it much further than that, right? We have the actual infrastructure as code. We have basically everything that we need to run the application as code, and that way we can automate it, right? So it makes it easier to provision new environments, to further kind of enable that culture of experimentation, and we'll talk a little bit about it in the real life scenarios as well. And another point, And I think collaboration was one of the biggest words in our first World Cloud. So it is truly key, and it's very hard to kind of take a lot of the principles of DevOps without having a good culture of collaboration within the organization. And that's one of the things that that is worth addressing. And the last point that I have here on kind of a little bit of my learnings is that you cannot just implement DevOps. There's a lot of things, as you quite well pointed out, regarding behavior, regarding culture, regarding the processes and changes that are required to really take full advantage of that. So we can maybe implement a CI/CD pipeline. We can add some automation. We can change things so that it's infrastructure as code. But to really have a kind of a full DevOps practice, we need all these things as well. Everything is still with me, everyone? It's very hard to see with the lights, but I hope so. Yes. So there's this this quote from Sanjeev Sharma that I really like. That at its heart, DevOps is actually a cultural movement, and we need that. And the organization needs to be able to overcome its cultural inertia, as Sanjeev puts it here, so if we want to really push the DevOps agenda and keep on improving. All right, so I wanted to now tell you a little bit about some of the cool work that I've been a part of in the last years. And well, maybe I'm a bit biased, so the cool part, but I've been really enjoying kind of what I've been doing, and it's so good to share it with you. So I've been working a lot with Red Hat in Openshift in the last years, and one of the things that we have been doing that we have been having quite a lot of fun with is that we have been working on internal POCs or proof of concepts for Openshift. So two things that we have been doing is, one of them is that we actually have been trying out the Openshift managed service on Azure. And so we have been doing this together with Red Hat and Microsoft as well. And the other one is that Openshift 4 is coming out very soon, and we already have been trying out the private preview on AWS. So this is a kind of a really fun way also to build your culture, to have some hackathons, or you can call it whatever you want, and maybe get some pizzas, get people together, let them try out things together and learn. And I think some of the things there might then kind of, you might be able to take it to some other places as well. And we have been using it for not only getting to know the product and what you can do with it, but also to try out different applications that work well with the platform, so that we can then also take those learnings and kind of use them with our clients as well. And that's actually what we ended up doing, is that we really enjoy this concept of hackathons, and it's not a new concept, but then the idea is that we actually took this concept and did it together with Microsoft and Red Hat at a client. So we actually went to a client side together with the client. We did this hackathon for one evening, where we actually set up a cluster and tried it out. So this was also kind of a fun way to also experiment together with the client, and so that we could actually all learn together. So that was a lot of fun. And then the third example, and it's something quite, I would say, dear to my heart. I've been working on this for the last 2-3 years. Is that we have been in a big project at a bank where we've been setting up a core banking application. And what you can see here, we have kind of the, I would say, the default production line, let's say, the pipeline for deploying the application to production. And so this setup is in virtual machines and with kind of more traditional setup, one would say. And it's working. This is what we have in production. But then we saw that it wasn't really addressing the need for the teams to have other environments, other sandboxes where they could try things out, try some product configurations, test them in kind of separate ways. So this wasn't really doing it because it wasn't flexible enough. It wasn't that easy to provision new environments and just giving them out to the teams. So what we have done here is that we actually, at the time, so I think this was around maybe 3 years ago, there was a POC starting to getting Openshift running at the client, and we actually kind of seized that opportunity, taking advantage of this, I would say, experimental mindset, and say, hey, why don't we actually try to migrate the core banking application into containers? Let's get it up and running in Openshift and see if we can take some of the advantage of a containerized application to improve our flexibility and our ability to provision environments quickly. And some people might have said, no, you can't do it, you're crazy. And you'll see why when I tell you what the technology stack is. But we actually did it, and this was a really cool experience. And right now we have over 50 environments running in containers for teams to do all sorts of different experiments. An important part of testing a core banking application is actually the product configuration, and kind of you need to do time traveling. So you need to be able to test the different product configurations across months and several years. And they're usually not the same timelines for the different products, so you can actually need some independence to be able to do those tests. So that's really what this is giving us. And for the technology stack, before I present you the technology stack, I wanted to kind of remind you that one of the, I would say, still obstacles or issues that we have here is that we have one production line in virtual machines, and then we have some more of the dev and test environments in Openshift in containers. So this is, I would say, not ideal. And again, I think this goes back to the idea of not having to be all or nothing. It's not ideal because you do have two platforms that you're maintaining, and also maybe if something is working in the sandbox, it's not 100% sure that it will work in dev, right? But we still have the pipeline to ensure that things are working. But we do have some kind of challenge there. And that is why you can see kind of our setup here and the technology stack. I think some people, when we tried out 3 years ago, was like, no, you're crazy, don't put WebLogic in a container. You can't do it. But we decided to try it out anyway. And it's actually working. Yes, it's big containers. I think this goes back to it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be kind of the absolute DevOps perfection. But it is working for us. It's working in the development and test environments. It is enabling the teams to experiment. And getting back to the different pipelines, the reason why we have this configuration is because this is the configuration, this is the technology stack that we're using in production. So even though we have two different platforms, we still want the teams to have the same technology stack that is in production. And here I mean the Oracle database, the WebLogic, the OSB. So we just want to kind of make the configuration as close as possible. So it's kind of going back to finding the best solution within reach that can help you address the challenges that you are facing. So I think I really like this example because it's not this perfect DevOps setup, microservices in containers or serverless, but it's a real example, and it's something that did give us, if it goes, yes, it did give us quite some improvements. So the main challenge that we were addressing when we started working on migrating the setup into Openshift and into containers was actually how long it took to provision an environment. So we were in the timeline of around 2-3 weeks to provision an environment, and you have different teams still maintaining the kind of the WebLogic and the database, etc. So it was quite complex to provision them, and we actually changed that to with this technology, with this platform, to have environments provisioned in less than 1 hour. I think there's still some things that we can improve there. So for example, they are not fully self-service yet. We're still working on that, but I think it's a pretty big improvement, and we are quite happy with this. And then the other thing was that before we were seeing that sometimes there would be some configuration that would be changed in WebLogic or in the database that could have negative impact, and this is addressed quite well in this setup, because in the more traditional setup we have several components and they have different systems where their configuration lies, and now with the migration to containers we have infrastructure as code. We have, when we need to deploy a new version of the application, it's a new container image that we need to deploy. So it's actually much simpler than the other setup, and we do enjoy simplicity quite a lot. So this is really kind of the learnings that I want to share with you, and some of the real life examples. And I hope you enjoyed. Achu. And I wanted to leave you as well as part of kind of, okay, this is the things that I've learned, and I'm a big reader, so I wanted to leave you with a few book suggestions for you to take away from here. Maybe I'll ask for some hands. Who has read the Phoenix Project? I guess that's the most. Actually, not that many. That's very good. That's a lot of potential for learning. It's super fun. So I think it's really a wonderful introduction to DevOps in a novel style. So it's quite interesting. And then the other ones are a bit more on the technical side. And the one on the right, it's actually one that it came out I think last year. It's from Mirko Herring. He's actually our DevOps, kind of global DevOps lead in Accenture, and so I'm a bit biased